Hello, everyone, and welcome. I have designed a gold farm for Minecraft 1.7. Yes, you heard that right. It's a very old version at this point of Minecraft 1.7. So you might be wondering why I've done that. Well, the truth is, just couldn't help myself. I've been watching this amazing series on YouTube called UHC Ancestors, and gotta help the loosest goose out, you know? Um, And by the way, before we get into this any further, if you're watching this, the loose goose, no pressure. Build the farm, don't build the farm. Uh, I wanted to be helpful, and I wanted to give you an option for a different design for a farm. And so here it is. All right. So basically, this farm has three different sections to it. First of all, there's this collection area down below here at the bottom. And then there's a shifting floor up above here. So I'll just turn that on for a second so you can see that functioning for a moment. Goes back and forth. And then there's a ladder that goes all the way up to build height for the AFK spot for the farm. So you may be wondering, why put the AFK spot so far above? Well, the thing is that the way that mobs spawn is they spawn in a spherical area around the player. So there's a radius, and under 24 blocks, they won't spawn in near the player. It might be 32. I might be forgetting things there. And then in a 128 block sphere, that is the area where mobs will spawn. And I know there's some other mechanics we don't need to get into, but basically there's a radius around the player where mobs will spawn. The problem with making mob farms is that below the bedrock is where most of the mobs will want to spawn. If you're just standing here on the surface, I'm going to open my F3 menu here. You can see that the entities equals around 70. So 70, somewhere in that range, that's where the mob cap is. The reason why you see that number of entities around is because you can't see them, but below the bedrock, that's where all the pigmen are. But we want the pigmen to be up here, but there's no pigmen up here. Well, first of all, there's no pigmen here because I'm standing near this platform. But the other reason why there's not pigmen here is because they all have valid places to spawn down below. So in order to prevent them from spawning down below, we need to go up higher. Now you will notice that that number is fluctuating. It went down to 69, 68, 67, and then at some point it jumps back up. So what's happening here is if the mobs are far enough away, they actually have a chance to despawn, even if we just stand here, and then new mobs will spawn in new places. So if we stood here long enough, eventually we would get some drops from this farm. But as you can see, we aren't getting a lot right now. The rates with us just standing here, not very good. So in order to improve those rates, we want to get high up in the air so that we don't have that issue. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to set up the default for Minecraft on this version is 8 chunks. So I'm going to put my thing on 8 chunks, and then we're going to go up this ladder. I'm a little bit too lazy to go up this ladder manually. I have another clever little solution over here. So we're just going to go to the top of the ladder. Now we're at the top of the ladder. All right. So then we can see here our entities has dropped way down to basically nothing. And then there we are. Now we notice how it's at like 7 or whatever. So I'm going to do something here I can't do without mods. Camera switch, I think it's 1. So here you can see, here's the farm running down below. Because we can't really, inconvenient thing is when you're AFK, you can't actually see the farm running. And you can see how nothing's really spawning in. For whatever reason, if you have your render distance on the default setting, they don't like to spawn it. So interestingly though, if we set this up to 10, now we can see that a lot more entities, first of all, that E number, you can see on the screen, the number of entities, that's that third row on the F3 screen is higher. And mobs are starting to spawn into the farm here. And there they go, they fall through. The shifting floor, basically by moving these half slabs back and forth, the mobs fall through and then they die right away. The way I see it, there's basically 3 different ways you could make a gold farm in 1.7. We could have a gold farm that relies on the mobs pathing off of a platform. I believe that's what already exists on the current playthrough that the Lucis Goose is enjoying. There's maybe some ways to optimize that from the way the design currently is, but overall, the problem is that you're going to have to wait for the mobs to path around. The nice thing about the shifting floor is that the mobs just immediately can drop through, and then that frees up the mob cap for more mobs to come along. The issue with these farms is that they don't actually count as a player kill when the pigmen die. So you're not going to get the increased drops from that, and you're especially not going to get looting. So you could get higher rates with a farm where the player kills the pigmen. The problem I see with this for a hardcore series is that now the pigmen are angry at you, and that can lead to all kinds of demises. So it's an idea. I think there's probably some valid ways to do that. I kind of took it as a design decision not to go with that kind of approach for what I designed here. But that does mean that the drop rates will be lower. I still think they will be respectable, though. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to show you is this area up here. I am almost at build height here. Build height actually be on top of these leaves here. And the thing about this is ideally you want to be as high as possible. And I'll explain a little bit more about why later. But I decided that maybe we could compromise a little bit here and have the AFK platform one farther block down, because then you get this nice sort of guardrails around. It feels a little bit safer. Um, the other thing I did here is I made a fall mechanism here. So if I stand here against this, I'm on the ladder. But if I walk all the way across, fall down, and then whoop, catches you right at the bottom. I'm not sure if I would recommend that you make this in hardcore, because technically I think some lag shenanigans could happen, but it's pretty reliable as long as you have a decent number of these ladders here on the side at the bottom. So maybe something to think about for the impatient for being able to get down sooner. All right. So the way that this works is we have some redstone here. So maybe this is a good time for me to hold still as you can look at this. This is basically to unload the hopper minecart. There's a torch, there's a repeater, and there's a comparator. All right. And this lever is totally optional. It's just to keep the cart from running when I don't want it to. So then the cart will go down. There's rails in this whole area. So we have a 14 by 29 collection area below the farm here. And it's got the rails. And then the way we're powering these rails is that there's a lever down below, and we just flick that lever on, and it's just a cheap way to power all these rails. So we just have the rails going back and forth here. And then we have a collection chest. This collection chest is about what you need for an hour, and you can feel free to add more chests and storage to the system if you want to be able to AFK for multiple hours here. For reference, I did a 30-minute run of the farm, and here's what I got for drops. So actually, maybe it could go for an hour and a little bit more than that with this design. Okay, so 14 blocks this way for the dimensions of this square, and then 29 this way. If we go over 16 blocks, we get to just past the middle, and then this ladder that I've placed here is 7 blocks over. So this would be block number 1 here. Oop, okay, I'm in creative mode. Forgot about that. All right, so you go up here. Remember, so the bedrock here, if you look at the y coordinate I have right now, it's 128. So then if I go up to where we start building the farm up here, this lever, we stand on this lever over here. This is at y 157. Okay. I'm just going to punch out some of these spawn proofing blocks here so we can see the redstone a little bit better, and I'll explain how this circuit works here. All right. So this part is just a clock. So we have a repeater on 4 ticks. We got 3 of those, and then we got this repeater on 3 ticks. This is just the timing that I copied from a farm by another creator. Um, One of the things I wanted to do with designing this was applying some of the more modern design principles we have for technical Minecraft back to an older version, which was a fun and interesting challenge. So I borrowed this clock from a creator called Booty. They have a witch farm with a shifting floor, and they used this timing, so I used the same timing they used. Then we got a repeater here going into this pulse limiter. So what happens here? We have a signal going in. It powers the sand block. The sand block then powers the piston, which then moves the sand block out of the way, which then breaks the circuit. That then results in this really short pulse, which is then read by another repeater. And then we go into the actual mechanism for the farm. Okay, so for the actual mechanism for the farm, we have this redstone line. And then all I do with the redstone line is I power these pistons here with it. So you have a piston, and that piston's going to push the row here. And then the reason why it's 14 blocks long in this direction is because that's just how the signal strength works out. So basically, if this is a signal strength of 15 here, and you're going to go 14, 13, 12, et cetera, all the way down the line. So I'm just kind of doing the max you can do without needing more repeaters here going this way. All right, so we power these pistons. So this signal happens here. And then after a short delay, we want to push everything backwards. So then we have a repeater here. This repeater is on 2 ticks of delay, and it pushes everything back, which 2 ticks was just the minimum so that it has time to push, and then it can push back. Um, the, there's 12 slabs here across this shifting floor surface. Why 12? Well, because if you put 13, then you're over the push limit. So it's 13. Why? Because of the block gap here, but there's 12 of these blocks. So when you're placing these in, if you're running the clock, you could just sort of stand here and keep placing slabs until they're all the way across. Now it'll give you the measurement there. All right. And then above all of this stuff, because the mobs can spawn on all of these solid block surfaces. So because of that, I've just gone in and I've just placed slabs above everything. So you just place slabs over all of this stuff. You could also use carpet over most of these. You don't put carpet over the sand block, but pretty much everything else, if you wanted to use carpet to spawn proof this, that'd also be perfectly fine. Make sure that when you're spawn proofing this, you got the bottom slabs, because if you have top slabs, this is a full block here again. So we don't want that. Okay. All right. These blocks, every 2, we have a floating bottom slab here over the farm. There's enough height under here that a mob can spawn and then fall through, so it's not blocking those spawns. The reason why we have these is to prevent the big magma cubes and the ghasts from spawning. So if you don't have these slabs here, you also have a uncontained ghast wildlife preserve here going on. And also, you need to add these ones that are overhanged a little bit here, or then technically a ghast or maybe not a ghast, but a magma cube, a large one, can spawn here right in the edge. It's not that critical to get these edge ones, but it's perfectionist thing. Okay, so yeah, 13 blocks wide here again on this part, just to make sure I get all the signs here. All right. By the way, any solid block will do where I've used netherrack. So maybe you can, use your own artistic choices for what kind of blocks you want to use for the farm here. Doesn't have to be netherrack. And any slabs are also fine. Doesn't have to be these ones. And I think some of these blocks don't even necessarily need to be slabs. These could be solid blocks under here. Probably, yeah, doesn't. So some of the block trace is not that important. I use leaves here because they're cheap and you can see through them, and I thought that maybe that would be fun. You could use glass, you could use solid blocks. A lot of these block choices are not that critical in terms of how they work. And then, of course, once you've finished building the farm, down here, you have the way up there. Now, prerequisites for building the farm. I would highly recommend feather falling. The reason is because uh, building a mob farm like this, well, you're building a literal death trap. So it would be awfully handy not to die building the death trap. Um, from these heights, if you have protection armor, some of my tests I was able to survive with just the protection. But if you want to make sure that while you're building this part, it's not so easy to die from falling all the way down there, because this is specifically designed to be high enough that when the mobs fall, they die. Um, then feather falling is a pretty good call. I didn't test exactly how much feather falling you would need in order to be able to survive this. I didn't test for the minimum, but feather falling, good things to have. All right. Um, and also with the platform up there at the top, you can kind of build that however you want to. So if you want to make it a little bit wider, the top, and not so small up here. One of the problems is that you can't really see what's going on with the farm. So one of my thoughts was maybe I should show you how to do some B-roll for this, or anyway, whatever. Because when you're up here, you can't really see what's going on. The only way you can really know that the farm is working is because you can look at that third row with the E colon, the entities on the screen, and then that will tell you kind of what's going on in general. So those entities, that will be drops from mobs in the farm, and that will also be the mobs themselves. So it's and the other interesting thing you'll notice from this is this also helps tell us that we're not maxing out the rates on this farm. If this was running at full tilt, then entities, like if we were maxing out the spawning spaces possible from this farm, then we should have an entity count which is well over 70 entities. Um, I think we only have like maybe a third of the potential max spawning spaces in this farm as it's currently designed. And so there's an argument that you could probably double or triple this and it would still give you more drops. I don't think it needs to be bigger necessarily, because we're getting about 100 gold ingots an hour with the way this is designed, and I can see that actually. Um, we need to turn on the shifting floor if we want those mobs to. There we go. Um, I guess another thing is there's a very small chance that the minecart will get stuck down here. I was able to only see that happening once. And oh, here we go. We have a chicken. That's a visual glitch. It's actually standing here up top. Um, these guys technically are taking up space in the mob cap, but because we're not maxing out the mob cap, it's not a huge issue. The same thing with the small magma slimes. And then if we are all the way up there, and then if they fall all the way down here to the surface, they should despawn. And that's one of the benefits of having ourselves all the way up there. So we're getting the full 128 blocks above, because it basically makes this floor a no man's land. Basically, any mob that comes all the way down to rest on the floor should despawn, because it's outside the radius where mobs are allowed to be around the player. If you start lowering down that spawning platform too much, then you start getting a circle around wherever you're standing, where the mobs won't, if they hang out here on the ground, they won't despawn. I think we got some leeway though, so I think one block down from build height isn't too much to ask for things. All right. This is the showcase here for the mob farm. And again, build it, don't build it. Hope you get what you need from it. I'm going to put a world download in the description for the video. And I'm not above providing more help and resources while you're trying to figure out how to build this in survival. The most expensive part is going to be these rails at the bottom. It's a lot of rails. And you could use more powered rails if you've got lots of gold on hand, or you could use more. Right now, I've got the minimum amount of powered rails pretty much here on how this is designed, but you could totally put more in here. The levers all go in these 3 rows, except for this one, which goes on the end here, because there's a You need to be able to turn the minecart around. So yeah, uh, and then of course every row of the shifting floor requires the 2 pistons. So that's where most of your cost is coming from this farm, besides just needing a bunch of blocks for it. Um, I'll also put a material list in the description here for the farm as well.